I'm not sure I can hear you. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Is your first name Hassan or Adesewa?
Adeshawa. My surname is Hassan.
Adesewa. What does it mean?
Crown of duty.
Ah, I see. That is a very beautiful name.
Thank you.
So, what do you do to stay upbeat as you do?
I thought it's the life of God at work in me.
That's nice, and that's actually a good answer. But what are the practicalities?
What are the practical? I believe number one, I'm an happy person generally, and happiness is infectious. So you just have to, it's not like, yeah, there are not some times where you'll be gloomy or something, some things will happen, but you just have to just bring yourself out of that circumstance. There's not is if there's you don't
Wow,
what you cannot control, you can't let it control you. So you would do all
wow,
the things.
stop speaking
Oh
plenty
my God.
now.
How?
Give me
I'm trying to
comment.
think, is there a particular thing that I'm doing that I'm supposed to that I do?
Are you
Maybe
sure?
sometimes when I'm not in the mood, I might just leave everything I'm supposed to do, probably watch a movie or sleep so that I'm not thinking about anything. Or make a phone call, talk about something that's different from what is going on, and that just drives my attention away from whatever is happening, and it re-energizes me. And sometimes also like going out to see new places is also mentally how will I put it helps mentally. So yes, so I don't have like a particular thing that I do, but apart from I think from what I can think about, these are the things I can think about.
Okay, that's good. Maybe you have a naturally happy spirit.
Yes, I'll say that.
That's good. So keep it, protect it, and don't let UK take it away from you.
No,
No
they don't
matter
have
how,
friends.
no matter how hard they unfortunately tries, don't let it steal it from you.
Thank
No
you.
matter how hard corporate UK tries, don't lose your happy spirit. It
Thank,
looks good on your face.
thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so before we get to 11:20, let's talk about the final subject of our today.
Yeah, I know I'd already covered like
HR
technology.
and tech.
Yeah, I'd already covered how I've covered recruitment and I've covered employee experience. I think another area is remote working. So how as technology like how do we leverage technology to ensure that we support remote working? So a lot of industries now working remotely, and as an HR team, you have to invest in technology that supports flexible working or remote working. So we have tools like Slack, like Zoom, like Teams, Asana that keeps remote employees connected to ensure that they are collaborating effectively. We have Miro, so there are different, even some project management tools that can be used depending on the team that you're working on, what you're trying to achieve. So that's one thing I keep saying about the HR. So it's not just about getting. I remember that I attended one conference, and one of the major issues they were talking about is how much applications are in the faces of employees. It's not about just acquiring an application, applying a system, or applying a technology. It's about how can this technology actually help to do something. Is that technology productive? Because sometimes employees get frustrated. I'm seeing message on Slack, I'm seeing message on Teams, I'm seeing it everywhere. So it becomes frustrating. So you have to also like be able to strategically select this application, these tools that you are using for your employees. And if it's not working, you can also change it. So like Teams. and a mirror. They create like a mirror, like this mirror where you can work on different things, like a vision board, and draw up different things. So it creates like a new way for teams to collaborate. So like mirror, like it has the virtual whiteboard, and where you can like do your design thinking, you can brainstorm together in real time without everybody doing the same working on the same platform. And it also makes the remote. So if I'm doing something and we're like the way we're talking and we're trying to take note of something, we're trying to like develop something, as we're talking, we can be using that particular application to like draw up the concept and draw up the processes we need. So those are kind of like examples of how technology is helping in that aspect. So another issue when it comes to remote working, there's always challenges of, okay, how can I track that my employees are working? How can I track that they're not taking advantage of the fact that they're working from home and all of that? So like it might be like, oh, you're favoring people that are working from home, but there's now performance management tools that can help you to track these things. That provides fairness and provide the transparency of tracking how employees performance is not just based on their physical presence, but based on the outcome of their work. So we have applications like Latix. We have
How do you spell it?
ILA
Mm-hmm.
TTICE.
Okay.
Then I think there's one, I don't know if it's 515, it's something like 15 or 15.5 or something like that. Is number
Okay.
15, something like that. So this helps to like prevent remote workers from being taken advantage, like being by being disadvantaged by taking advantage of the process. So another aspect of HR is learning and development, which is very key. You must ensure that your team has the right skills. So we have AI platforms like Coursera. These platforms like help to create like personalized learning paths. We have Coursera for businesses, where businesses can subscribe and their employees will have access. We have LinkedIn Learning. So if you have like that Microsoft Viva suite, you have the LinkedIn Learning as part of it. And one thing about Microsoft is that once you're using like a Microsoft system, it not just you can also link the data from let's say Viva to maybe your Workday or your SAP, or you can even link it to the finance and operation system where the HR is embedded, the HR ERP is embedded. So that's one thing about Microsoft. There's easy connections between the systems. And when you're purchasing like a system as an HR person, you have to look at all those things. The system I'm getting, can I easily connect the data with each other? Those are things that you need to like ask yourself. Can I easily connect? Because there's no point if you have to be exporting, importing, and because when you're exporting from somewhere and importing somewhere, the format for exporting will differ from format from importing the data, and you have to start cleansing the data and all of that. So those things so needs to be put in question when you're purchasing like a product or a technology system. So like so going back to learning and development, we have platforms where you can create personalized learning paths for each employee based on their role, based on their skill level, and based on their career goals. So and also the organization succession planning. So an employee comes into the organization and they're at a particular level. Okay, this person is a sales representative, and you believe this person can become like a sales manager. So what are the things that you're creating for that person? And these things are also, it's not just about just creating those things. You also have to have that kind of conversation, maybe with the person, know where they want to be, their plan and all of that, and also link their plan with that of the organization's plan. That's when you can create something that is personalized for the person. So that's still where the human part of the human part of HR rather comes in. It's not just about the technology. So the technology will just help the process to make the process seamless. So creating a personalized training is very relevant, and it improves engagement. The person's like, okay, there's room for growth, and there's likelihood that once employees have a new skill, they will apply it on their job. Even if they don't apply, they will train. They can also train other people that do not have the skills on how to use that skills. Another thing I learned, which was kind of new to me, it wasn't new, but like the concept was the concept was new to me when I was doing my master's program, was micro learning. So I had this project where I had this course where we taught us about micro learning. We had to like a project and come up with like a micro learning um program for an organization based on the different challenges that the organization was facing. So this is like just short and focused learning modules. So okay, I want to teach the managers about feedback. I want to teach supervisors about feedback. Just like make it very concise. That's what the micro learning talks about. So with AI, you can do all of these things. We have platforms like Synthesia where you can just create like I can use myself as the AI. I use my face. I put the speech and people just listen to what I'm saying. It just says the script. It just reads out the scripts that I've said. So it looks more interactive because you're seeing my face. Even though I'm not the one talking, you're seeing my face. I can talk in any language. It translates to any language. All those things make it easier to reach more people. So micro learning, because there's a lot of things employees are doing and there's a lot of their schedules are busy. So what microlearning does, it allows people to learn on the go. So we have technology systems that helps to improve all of this, even like platforms like I think the grid. I think I wrote it down somewhere. The grid, it's like brings out bit-sized learning models that are easy to complete in short breaks. And I know another challenge when I was in that my project, one challenge that we're having was like, okay, if you have people that are not very technical, maybe you have like lower level employees, how do you like incorporate this kind of things to ensure that they can use these systems? So these things, micro learning are things that you can even access on your mobile phone. Once they have the link, they just go on there, do the learning. There might be a short assessment after. So those are the way technology is also incorporating not just a particular level of a type of employee, but incorporating everybody into the use of technology. So many organizations are facing skill shortage, especially when it comes to digital skills. And so also using all these kind of platforms help you to also train, upskill the employees to also learn how to use these platforms, how to be more digital orientated. And you can get and as an organization, you'll be able to bridge this gap and also be ready and prepare your employees for the future of work. Because irrespective of your position as an employee, you have to use the internet, you have to be digital savvy one way or the other. Even if you're a cleaner, you will get to a point where you have to like go attend trainings online. You have to maybe do your rota and all of those things online. So you have to it also helps to train everyone to be digital ready. So this major part of HR, which like has been having a lot of buzz of late, is diversity, equity rather. I've been saying equality and inclusion. So with technology, we've been able to like bring up new tools where you can track the diversity metrics.
What?
Are you saying something?
Adesewa,
Are you saying something?
calling your name.
Okay. Okay, because I saw you talking. So we have platforms
Does it sound like your name, eh?
like
Okay, so we have to round up so that we can go to the other speaker, okay?
okay. So let me just round up with so the last part was more about data, which like obviously with technology you can create more proactive decisions as an HR person. You can analyze data around employee turnover, engagement, performance, and all of that. So, and which is a very critical part for HR. So, in rounding up, I would say I would emphasize on the need to like make technology a supporting tool for HR, not to create more efficient process, not taking out the human element of it. For a successful HR technology implementation, they always has to be centered around enhancing employee well-being, fostering authentic connections, and supporting a positive work culture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adesawa. I pray that God will help you to make your career flourish. You
Amen.
seem to have a lot of nice things that you've learned about your career.
Thank you. And I pray that God will
I pray
continue
that you love.
strengthening you too.
Hey, we are praying for each other at the same time. That's really nice.
God will strengthen you.
Okay.
You're almost there. The clock is almost there. So what will be the first thing you will do once you are done?
Right
Sleep.
now,
Like once you finish, when you get to the end of this, what will be the first thing you will do?
sleep, of course.
You won't eat.
Yeah, I'll eat. I'll eat and sleep. And then maybe I'll wake up on Monday.
No, that is no matter out there, you can't sleep that much.
All right. Take
No
care, okay?
problem. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye. Hi, how are you?
Hello, Tom Chris. How are
Hi,
you?
I'm well, thank you. You're
You're
welcome.
exhausted.
Oh my goodness. Well, the Lord is my strength because we've fought the
Amen.
already and we've won. Now it's time to wrap it up properly and then
Mhm.
we can rest.
That's wonderful. Congratulations to
Thank
you
you.
and to all of the speakers that have come so far. It's great to be here.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Please
Mhm.
introduce yourself to our online guests.
Sure. So, hello, everyone. My name is Hawa Kambian. I'm joining you all today from Tamale, which is in northern Ghana. And I am a coach, facilitator, and public speaker who helps organizations and leaders prepare for the future of work.
Great. Okay. So you are going to be talking on just 1 second. You know, I thought you are in the US.
Mm, sometimes, not all the
Yeah,
time.
right.
Yeah.
How to emotionally prepare for the future of work. The emotional is
Mhm.
quite important, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Okay.
actually, I'm so happy I came after Adesewa and listening to her talk, where she was really focused on the tools and the practicality of leading an organization. And that, of course, is so important when we're focused on entrepreneurship. However, I also would love for us to be able to discuss today, and I welcome any questions you might have, Tom Chris,
Yeah.
around expanding our definition of how leaders show up to do that work in organizations. And there's three things I'd like to share with everyone today so that they can just start thinking for themselves in their own organizations and reflecting on how their emotions are showing up in their work and in their leadership.
Over to you.
So, sounds good. Great. So, first, I'd like to start with compassion. And compassion is really an element that grounds us to our past. Many of the emotions we feel in day-to-day life and in the present moment are born of past experiences we had, past triumphs, past failures. And so when you're a leader in an organization, the habits and the tendencies that you have when you're leading a team and leading people are often based on your past experience. So, for example, someone who has been leading an organization and has had consistent experiences where the team doesn't listen may become a leader who shouts and uses aggression and authority to get their point across. Based off of not having your needs met in the past, it influences how you show up leading your team today. And this might sound very general, but as we know, leadership and entrepreneurship is not easy. And people tend to be under pressure, like doing a 98-hour interview over 5 days. And when you are in unusual circumstances, your emotions are not always the calmest and most collect that they might be. And people tend to fall into two camps when they are under a lot of pressure and stress. They either tend towards underperforming or overperforming. And that underperforming as a leader can look like taking a step back, being in survival mode, focusing on what is most pressing. So Tom, Chris, today or this week, for example, you are not fielding partnership calls and partnership meetings because your energy is focused on these 100 hours of interviews. You are having to focus and underperform in other areas of your business so that you can focus on making this event a success. So leaders need to understand what their tendencies look like when that tends to be their response. And then on the other side of the spectrum, some leaders, and I will take ownership here and say that I fall into this camp, tend to overperform, which can look like micromanaging. It can look like wanting to have control over every little detail so that things don't fall through the cracks and we don't run into problems. So based off of past experiences that some of these leaders may have had, this might show up in the way that they choose to lead their teams. And we know that when without balance or left unchecked, underperforming and spending less time and focus on your team can cause problems. So can asking for status updates every 30 seconds from your team. That's not productive either. So this is where having compassion for ourselves, understanding what challenging things we've been through in the past, understanding where we can learn from them and adapt them so that our work experience can be better is hugely beneficial. Next, that brings me to number 2, which is curiosity. In the present moment, it can be very challenging when under stress for leaders to practice curiosity. And this is usually because we come into life, we come into work with expectations. And expectations are neither good nor bad. They help us manage the day. They help us plan for the future. However, life always has a dash of chaos in the mix. And as much as we plan, we can never know for sure how something is going to go. And so in those moments when things don't go according to plan or according to expectation, are you a leader who clings to your desire for what you wanted to have happen and then use that to attack the people around you, which tends to look like a lot of blaming? It tends to look like a lot of anger and frustration. Or are you a leader who can find and cultivate the energy to ask questions, right? If, for example, even in this interview session, if one of the speakers was late, would it be more productive to yell at the team to get something done? It might be in the short term, but it may not solve the problem directly around understanding where was the speaker, are we in communication with them? Do they have the link to the Zoom chat? Things of this nature. So leaders being able to put their expectations on hold for a moment and start asking questions that will allow them to actually solve the problem and understand what's not working for their teams. Because often leaders are communicating with people and teams who are executing and doing the day-to-day work. And sometimes the way you plan how work is going to go is not how it actually operates when people are living it day to day. So again, having leaders come from a place of more curiosity, asking questions and collaborating to problem solve is a huge piece and huge step in being more emotionally intelligent at work. And lastly, number 3 would be being change focused. And we like to throw around a lot of words like innovation and technology, like GSEW24 had mentioned during her conversation. And what we need to remember is that it's important to understand what cost you are willing to trade off when you engage in change as a leader. right? Is your change being driven because you're scared of what your competitors are doing and you're worried that your business might not survive tomorrow? And so you're making rushed, panicked, urgent decisions? Or is your change born of intention, strategy, a thoughtful plan that actually reflects a plan that reflects where the organization can operate today, right? If you wake up and you decide that you want to be performing like a company like Apple and you've only been in business for a year, then putting that level of pressure and expectation and demand on your team might not yield the results that you're looking for, versus an approach that paces the growth of your team so that you can actually be more successful from a realistic perspective. So yeah, Tom, Chris, those were the three pieces that I wanted to share around being more emotionally intelligent in order to lead for the future of work, to be able to make these strategic decisions, to leverage all of this new technology we're talking about, because as Adesawa mentioned, it means nothing without people at the center.
Wow, that was good. And I apologize if I'm not there front and back.
No
Some of
worries.
them are not necessarily in excitement, but the other guy is telling me it's time to. uh, but thank you, Howard.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have the checklist, but I wanted to also ask you about your career journey
Yeah,
and how
sure.
to help young talents to, imbibe these wonderful attributes for the future of work. Yeah.
Yes. So as I mentioned, I'm sitting in Tamale in northern Ghana today, which is a place that I'm very proud to represent and to speak to the kind of diversity and thoughtfulness that exists in a rural part of West Africa. However, my career journey began in Canada. So I've worked in the social impact sector across Canada and then also across Sierra Leone, Nigeria. And now I find myself in Ghana, having worked in digital health as well as job and career support for young people. So one of the things that I think is critical as we start to come together in more forums like what you've created, Tom, Chris, where we have so many amazing people from across the world sharing stories, is to keep sharing stories. I think often we take for granted how much wisdom there is in the experiences we've had. And this comes back to point number one around compassion, to not feel shame for your journey, to not feel shame for all the times it didn't work out, or doors got closed in your face, or someone treated you unkindly, right? Because every single one of those moments becomes an opportunity for you to ask yourself, when I'm in this position, what would I do differently? And that's something that has driven me in my career through the places that I've worked at. And I've been very lucky to work in spaces that are very tech savvy and innovative, which is an incredible space to be able to witness and see what's on the front line of, what's emerging in Africa and the opportunities that are here for people. And at the same time, it provides an opportunity to say, what have I noticed could look different? What are certain things that we take for granted in those environments that if we were to change them, could provide greater social benefit for people? So I think it's important to tell our stories, to not be afraid of failure, and to drive our efforts towards asking where there's still room for social impact to be expanded in whatever we're doing, whether that's social impact with employees, social impact with customers, with suppliers, whatever the case may be.
Awesome.
Yeah.
When did you return to the continent?
I returned around 2017 or so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when I was in Sierra Leone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Intentionally?
Yes. Yes. I was there shortly after this was after the Ebola outbreak in 2015. So I was
Okay.
working with an organization that was starting to digitize, which basically means put everything on a tablet or a phone around healthcare in Sierra Leone, because in those days, everything was still very paper based, which is slow, inaccurate, and we were trying to save lives, to work with the government to save lives. So I had a really beautiful opportunity to be there and to work with really talented people who are driving that work. Yeah.
Exciting.
Mhm.
And from there to Ghana?
Yes. And in between Nigeria as well. I spent some time in
Right.
Kano, Nigeria, which is northern Nigeria, which is very beautiful. And again, doing similar public health emergency support and work as well. And then, yes, to Ghana, where I moved more into skills training and support, and now leadership development.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Mhm.
so now you're back. Are you looking to establish your career here?
Yeah, absolutely. My family is from Ghana, and I'm very connected to the work that is being done in this area, and especially again in underrepresented areas like the North, where there's a lot of activity around social
Mm.
impact. And I believe that that actually gives us an opportunity to contribute to the narrative of what that looks like and what that means from the perspective of being from the diaspora, but also having family and connections who are here. And that's something that I really love about Ready to Work and the program that your team
Mhm.
runs. It's really about putting more ownership and creativity in the hands of people to say, what is it that you would like from this experience? As opposed, and having it be a two-way conversation, as opposed to the traditional way, which is quite top down. And so
Yeah.
I enjoy working with teams and organizations that are more interested in having productive and constructive conversations, and not just focused on what kind of innovation we're putting out, but how we're putting it out there. How
Mhm.
sustainable will it be? In 3 years, are we going to have to scrap it and start something all over? Or are we setting it up so that, you know, junior people can come up, learn the ropes, can build on it, can add to the tech stack, you know, all of these really creative tools that we have, that we didn't have even 10 years ago, and which
Mm.
allow people, again, in places like the rural North as well, to be able to participate in events like this, to be able to participate more in the global economy, and to find jobs.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's what. Okay. So, um, do you get to receive contact from your friends in the diaspora? What did they ask you about about Ghana? Let me not say the continent, because I mean Africa is so big now. So what did they ask you about Ghana, and how
Mm.
do you engage with them?
You know, if I'm being honest, most of my friends are not in the diaspora. So
Okay.
I also grew up in the Middle East. I spent time
Okay.
living in the Middle East. And so I grew up with friends from across the Gulf, from across North America, and across my studies. And so what people tend to ask me about Ghana is they tend to wonder, safety is always a concern and an issue when
Mhm.
you, especially when people talk about wanting to visit.
Mhm.
However, I think the thing people hear most about Ghana is the level of development and growth and the
Right.
opportunity, right? And especially, I think the year of return also made Ghana a very hot topic. in the last few years. And so people are quite curious about what it looks like to move back to Ghana, to establish homes, to set up a lifestyle, and what that looks like and feels like. And I think it's interesting because I can answer from the perspective of a little bit of Accra, but also from the perspective of something outside of the capital city as well, right? Because I think we often forget that most of the world's population do not live in huge capital cities. Even I forget that sometimes, right? So it is important to have an awareness and an appreciation for some of these places off the beaten path, or some of these alternatives when people are thinking about Ghana specifically, or anywhere in Africa, right? Like Kenya does not just mean Nairobi. Nigeria does not just mean Abuja or Lagos, right? There's so much more, and it makes those cultures so much richer.
Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, speaking of culture and richer, Tamale
Yes.
is one of the new places that people say if you're tired of Accra, the hustle and hustle of Accra, then you
Mm-hmm.
should consider Tamale. They
Yes.
say, yeah, so you are the first person voice from that side. Please tell us,
Okay.
what's Tamale? What is it like? And does it meet all the metrics that people who want to escape Accra can find?
So those are two interesting questions. So firstly, what is Tamale like? It is much more relaxed and calm in general than a place like Accra. It's a lot easier to get around, mostly because it's smaller. And culturally, it has a higher Muslim population, which is something that is very connected to the culture. So, for example, holidays like Ramadan and Eid and Muslim holidays are celebrated in tandem with the Christian culture out here. And I think that's very important to note because they really do connect and integrate and merge. And it's actually very beautiful to see in that context. I think for those who are wanting to escape Accra, and I use the word escape very deliberately because you used it, Tom Chris. I think if you're looking to escape the hustle and bustle of Accra, I think Tamale is beautiful. It's like bringing it down a notch in your level of over tech connection. So it's a lot easier to have some space from noise, to disconnect from technology. However, some people may not be comfortable living like that on a consistent basis. And so I
Mhm.
think you do have to be honest with yourself about what your requirements and expectations are. Point number two, you have to be honest with yourself about your own expectations of how connected you want to be, what you expect to be doing with your time, how much you want to be out in nature versus connected to your device, in order to decide how long of a period staying in a place like Tamale might suit you and support your interests and your goals.
Let me see if I have any other question before.
Sure.
Do they speak Twi or Hausa?
For sure, they speak Hausa more,
Okay.
for sure. But you will find people who speak Twi in
Oh,
Tamale. No wahala.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm, well,
Have you been?
no, not at all.
Oh, sounds like that's something you need to put on your calendar for 2025
I
after you've
think
had a
so.
long sleep after this.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. Yes, 2 more hours. Sorry. Listen, is this one on YouTube?
2025. So you've had a long.
Okay, no question for you yet. If I'll keep an eye on the link. If somebody sends a question, I'll route it to you. However,
Okay, yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Yeah. So, what is it? What are some business opportunities that are over there that people might not know about, or people should know more of?
I would say the big one is our agriculture out in the north. There is land out here, there are farms. In fact, for most people in Accra or who know of ShopRite, there is a lot of produce in ShopRite that is farmed and harvested in northern Ghana that we, the northerners, won't even eat, but it gets farmed and sent to the south and put in the grocery stores. So there's a huge opportunity and potential for agriculture out in the north. And as an entrepreneurial endeavor, there are organizations that are starting to innovate and ask questions around how to build better irrigation systems up north, given that we typically only have one farming season, and southern Ghana, closer to Accra, typically has two, I believe, as well as using technology to support better crop yield and return on investment. But unfortunately, agriculture needs a marketing push around it as well, I believe, to incentivize more young people to be excited about getting into that, and also to sort of switch this mindset around being an entrepreneur and being in industry means that I'm in the big capital city, right? And at some point that just becomes a question of market dynamics, right? If we're going back to business 101 or even a business model canvas, if capital cities are saturated with people doing similar types of work, then there may be opportunities in other places. And so I think it would be wonderful to see ready to work students who are excited about, who are ready to work and are excited about coming up to the north and, you know, finding their feet there and contributing to the communities up here, and even moreover, setting themselves up for wonderful, productive businesses that will also feed the nation, right? So it's just, it has this beautiful circular ripple effect if that's something that we're willing to all recognize and invest in.
Yeah, absolutely. But what do you think about agriculture in general?
In general, I will say I don't know enough about it, even though my family line goes back to people who worked on the farm. And I don't have much of a professional background in agriculture, but from the community that I live in, and even just what I see my neighbors across the road doing, people are still trying to grow rice, given the odd rainy season that we had this year. And so you see how much it touches on day-to-day life for people out here. And you know that it's important. So I believe in it. I support it. I'm open to learning more, as always. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So for people who entrepreneurs that want to access the US, Canada, UK market, is there any advice you have in that direction?
That's a good question. And I know that there have actually been a lot of Canadian speakers today, I believe. So it'll be interesting to contrast what I'm saying or compare what I'm saying to what they're saying. But I think when it comes to those markets, their level of maturity around business communication, I would say, is quite different than what you find on average and I'll speak for West Africa. And so I think there is a lot of room for us as Africans to invest in the way we communicate and specifically our mindset around customer service. Because customer service sounds like a very simple concept. And maybe when I say that, someone thinks about a server in a chop bar, but it extends into customer relationship management. When you're working in an organization, it extends into partnership development. When you're trying to negotiate deals and get people to do, cross-continental trade deals with you, and your ability to communicate, to be curious, right? Again, so to not be triggered or hurt by things from the past, to be willing to have open conversations when you don't understand something, which is highly likely. We're talking about different cultures that are so rich and so different. There needs to be a willingness to have conversation, to say, excuse me, I don't know. Can you please share more about what you're saying? Or can you please direct me to extra resources? There needs to be that willingness to be emotionally vulnerable enough to ensure that you are communicating effectively with people. And I think that's the biggest one, because, even when I lived in Sierra Leone, I would hear Ghanaians who went to Sierra Leone say, wow, like life in Sierra Leone is a lot slower. And then when I would go to Nigeria, Nigerians would say, in Ghana, life is slow. So even in West Africa, you can see amongst our countries, we all feel a different pace of life and a different pace of business. And that's okay. The question is, can we come together? Can we meet in the middle? Can we collaborate? And so I would say that same mindset and mentality will be a very helpful skill set to use when you're talking to people in Canada, the US, the UK. Because at the end of the day, if someone is drawn to you, there's a reason for that. There's shared value. The question is, can we set ourselves up successfully so that we're tapping into it, getting the most out of it for ourselves, for our communities, for our businesses?
You have already intimated some answers to this question, but
Okay.
setting up for internationalization, what are the checklists?
You know what? I'm going to be very honest and say that I would not have a full checklist on thinking this through, because I also think it depends, Tom, Chris, on what approach you're taking. If you are setting up to be an international NGO or nonprofit, that could look very different versus if you're saying, you know what, I am going full private sector and I know what partners I want to work with, and whether we are going to have a partnership, whether someone will be a holding company versus a subsidiary. There's a whole world to explore when it comes to business structure. And so I think the first step is do your research. You don't have to exhaust yourself doing research. There are so many talented people that have been on the interview panel this past week who have insight into that. But I would really encourage people, do your research and ask yourself what kind of structure is going to meet your needs. It's going to be something you can manage today in your day-to-day, but is also going to give you the room to grow as you reach new heights, as you connect with new people, and you want to open up your organization to new opportunities.
Wonderful. Since we have 11 minutes more, let me take advantage of it to get your thoughts on a few topics. Okay. Before we continue in that direction, if someone wants to work with you, what should they have in mind? Like what are the areas that your name should come up in their mind?
Yeah, this is great. Thank you for asking this. So again, as I've talked about today, really being able to connect with leaders who are wanting to expand how their teams function is a very critical area that I like to work in. And team leadership is a crucial area where we get into leadership styles, delegation, adaptive leadership, which basically means that, people on your team will need different guidance and different support based on the task at hand for each of them. So that's a very big area that I dive into and help leaders invest in their leaders who are coming up in the organization so that there's a sense of succession planning and it helps ease operations. I also touched on customer service, and I think that is a huge one because it has so many layers to it that can really transform how a business is operating on the front end and on the back end. So customer service support, from communication to gathering data to incorporating some of these aspects of diversity and inclusion into how you want to create your product or offer your service. All of that is interconnected, and those are things that we touch on. And then, of course, there's coaching for career progression and career development for leaders and executives who know that they're making transitions either in the same organization or into a new organization, so that they have a trusted resource to speak with and support them as they are making these emotionally thoughtful decisions about what's next in their career or what's next in their organization. So those are some of the areas that I would be happy to connect with people on and dive deeper.
Okay.
Mm.
Now for my question.
Mm. Why are you laughing?
I'm wondering, for companies that want to get the best from their people, what advice do you usually give them?
Can you be more specific? Because that's a very
Vague, huh?
general, high-level question.
Yeah. So first, obviously, is setting up a team, but I guess you've answered that already. Maximizing output is the question. Operational effectiveness.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Tom Chris, and for everyone listening, I am one of those people who is often going to answer your question with a question, because I in no way expect or assume that one person's definition of improving performance is going to look like another person's definition of improving performance. So if I were to sit down with a leader, we would have a much more detailed and in-depth conversation where I would be asking questions about why performance needs to be improved, what hasn't been working, and what has been getting in the way based on the leader's perception. Because I think one of the key things when we're talking about leadership and we're talking about people and human interaction, one humbling idea to remember is that we are all navigating from perception. We all see what we see. We don't know what we don't know. And we come into situations with expectations and sometimes judgments based on our perception. And that's okay. That perception gives us a lens through which to see the world and to start thinking through how we can solve problems and improve things. So I think I would like to sit down with the leader and really say, I want to understand why for you, not hitting 500% of last year's goal is seen as not performing. Because I could talk to another leader who would say, oh, my team hit 200% of last year's goal and I'm thrilled. Everyone's getting bonuses. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think that level of perception is important to gauge, to understand what the leader's expectations are, and then start to say, okay, leader, let's dig back into that curiosity. What is going to be required if you have an expectation of hitting 500% of the goal? Where do you see your team is at right now? What are the things that they are lacking? So it becomes a much deeper conversation to help the leader extract what is it that I really want from this team. And then the end point, when we're trying to focus on the change of increasing productivity, becomes the question, how are we going to do that in a way that is sustainable, in a way that's realistic, in a way that aligns with your culture? Because let's be honest, Tom, Chris, in this startup ecosystem that we sometimes find ourselves in, some organizations are very comfortable moving fast and breaking things. And that sometimes includes their system, which includes tools, processes, and people. Some companies are okay with saying, I'm okay with having 50 people leave the organization after we push for productivity. I'm okay with that. That's okay. There's no judgment on that, but let it be an intentional decision if that's what you want to do as a leader, right? Let it be something that you have sat down and said, yes, I've thought about this for these and these and these reasons. My team and I understand this, and this is the direction we're going to take. As opposed to, again, oh, the competitor is doing this. This happened. The board said this to me. The stakeholders are doing that. Now I'm under pressure. Now I'm under urgency. And my emotions are telling me, I need to make a decision right now. We shouldn't even think. You should have been done that yesterday. I want us at 500% capacity. And this is where you can see with some leaders, are your emotions driving that request for higher productivity? Or have you really sat down and said, I can see everything on the board. I'm clear on my why. And this is why I'm going for 500% capacity. And this is what I'm going to have to do to make it happen. And I think that is so crucial in leadership, because it's very tempting to want to scroll on your phone and read about what the Nike CEO has done to increase sales, right? To read about what Apple just did to get their third quarter earnings, and to say, I have to do that. I have to make that happen. But you are not that organization. Your team is not that organization. Your context is not in that organization. And we need to be willing to just distill a little bit and say, why do you want what you want? There's nothing wrong with what you want. What you want is great. It's lovely that you have a vision. Let's just get it in alignment so that you can move forward with clarity and with the support of people behind you. Because a leader is not reaching their full capacity if people are not willing to follow them.
By the way, you have, the last time I saw you, between then and now, you have grown in confidence and authority, like exponentially. So
thank you.
How did that happen? Was it intentional?
You know, some of it is conscious and some of it is unconscious. So I firstly thank you for the comment, Tom, Chris. And honestly, I would encourage people to reflect. Reflect when great things happen, reflect when difficult things happen. And again, bring it back to the compassion for yourself. Bring it back to the learning. Bring it back to what you can do the next time you're in a different situation. And I think for me, that's definitely been a big part of my journey. So I really appreciate the recognition on your end. So thank you for that.
Welcome. Well, you have 2 minutes. So how do you want to use it?
Okay, my inner child is saying that it wants you to get up and do like a stretch break.
Okay.
So that you are like energized and ready to go for the next speaker.
Which will be the final angle.
Exactly. So you're on the home stretch. Yep. Ooh, you're gonna stretch really wide like you're yawning, Tom, Chris. Except this is a yawn that's gonna keep you awake, not one that's gonna make you fall asleep. Okay, you're gonna roll your arms backwards. Roll them backwards. You're gonna lean down and touch your toes. Lean down and touch your toes. Exactly. Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Get it. You remember that. Do it. Yeah. Okay. You're gonna jump up and down. I mean, I'm sitting on a chair, so I'm just gonna simulate, but just Move up and down, just get some energy going. Take a deep breath in. Take a deep breath out. Just remember the moment that you're in. Remember how far you've come. Remember what you've done over these past almost 100 hours. Sit with that. And I think with that, we're on time. So I will say thank you to you, Tom, Chris. I will say thank you to everyone who's watching at home. Thank you to everyone who has participated and who has made this event possible. So much gratitude. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
appreciate you too. Thank you. Take care.
All right, Aisha, you are wrapping it up for us. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So you want to introduce yourself?
I mean, first off, congratulations to you and the entire team. I think
Thank you.
this is amazing. It's
Thank you.
just superb. And I'm so humbled to be a part of it. My name is Aisha Addo. I am the founder of a nonprofit organization called Power to Girls Foundation, as well as a tech platform called My Power App. And my focus and experience is really around creating safe spaces for girls and women through my programming. So I do everything from tech to personal development to mentorship to entrepreneurship, really just looking at the services that we offer as a holistic service for girls and specifically for marginalized girls. And I do that in Canada and in Ghana. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's backtrack a little bit. Did you do your schooling in Canada or Ghana?
I did a little bit of both. So I moved to Canada when I was around 14. So my early years was definitely in Ghana. So like every aspect of me, I'm very Ghanaian to the core. Like,
Very much Ghanaian.
Yeah, very, very Ghanaian.
Okay.
So all the experiences that you think a 13-year-old, 14-year-old Ghanaian girl would have, I've had them.
Okay.
I was here.
So apart from accent, what else changed in Canada?
What else changed in Canada? What else changed in Canada? I mean, I think it really just opened me up to new opportunities.
Okay.
But for me, one of the things that was very important was whatever it is that I was doing in any part of the world, if it was in Canada, it was in the UK, wherever it is, there was always a desire to bring that back home. So that really was a no-brainer for me. So although I was in Canada, my hearts and like my roots were always deeply planted in Ghana.
Where did that come from?
I think I would say my dad. So
Right.
when I was leaving Ghana, one of the things that he said was, never forget your roots,
Yep.
never forget where you come from.
Yep.
And I think that was just really something that I held really dear to me. And when I got to Canada, I think, I always share this, that we are in a point in history where, like, being African generally is celebrated. The time that I went to Canada, being African was not celebrated. It was something that, like, we went through a lot of bullying. And even to the point where, like, some Africans would identify as Caribbean just so that they wouldn't go through that level of bullying. So yeah, it's just a really full circle moment, just being able to see that now it's like, our culture is being widely accepted, but it wasn't that case when I was there. So that was always something that I think also kept me grounded in recognizing that I'm in a space or I'm in a place where my Africanness was not necessarily celebrated. So I have to like celebrate that for myself and always remind myself that this is where I'm from. So yeah.
How did you celebrate it?
Honestly, by being around Kenyans. By being around Kenyans. And I think like the very first version of our organization started by supporting Kenyan girls and supporting African girls as well. So that also like became kind of like a reminder. And then I think when I also first started the organization, I became a bridge because I was dealing with girls that had been born in Canada, but their parents were very much African, right? So there were a lot of things that the parents were trying to share, or the lessons that they were trying to instill that was very much African. So they were trying to figure out, okay, well, this is what my daughter is saying, because when they go to school, this is the experience that they're having, right? Which is not very much close to what I experienced. So I became a bridge for those parents where, like, they would reach out to me and be like, okay, my daughter says she's going here. What are your thoughts about it? I'll be like, oh, okay, if it's a problem, I can go with her. Like, so I became that person. And I think that also really helped me celebrate my culture in that sense, but then also just really staying true to myself as well.
Okay, so you left Ghana at 12,
Around 14.
14.
Yeah.
Was it Canada or UK you went first?
Canada.
Canada.
Yeah.
You did your high school there?
I did my high school there. I did college in Canada. I worked in Canada. Like I guess my formative years were in Ghana. My other years were in Canada.
Yeah.
And then at some point, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then I put Ghana.
How did you cultivate identity then?
How did I cultivate? Oh, that's a good question. How did I cultivate my identity? I think because my formative years were in Ghana, and I was very much proud of where I'm from. It really, like, I wouldn't say that I had that issue of, who I was in terms of like where I'm from. That was always a constant. I think the areas or where my identity was cultivated was more so around purpose and how do I find my purpose and how do I, take all the experiences that I've gotten to make the world a better place, for lack of a better word, right? So it was really more around really coming into my own, right? Taking the experiences that I've gotten here in Ghana, taking the experiences that I've gotten in Canada, or wherever it is that I travel to, or the people that I meet, taking all of those different experiences and just making them mine, right? And I think that was like the key thing. It wasn't really around an identity crisis in terms of like, I don't know where I'm from, I don't know what I'm about. I think because I grew up here and I grew up with very Ghanaian parents, that was never really something that I actively thought about. It was more so, what is my purpose? How am I going to, how am I going to find my place in this world, or whatever world that I find myself in, if it's Canada, if it's Ghana, if it's wherever it is that I decide, okay, I'm leaving Ghana today, I'm going to Australia. How do I fit into that based off of the experiences that I have? So I think that was really what it was for me in terms of identity.
Was your dad an architect?
No.
What did he do?
My dad, he was an entrepreneur.
Okay, what about your mom?
My mom is also an entrepreneur.
Yeah, because I'm wondering where you learned that strong self of identity beyond advice.
Yeah. I mean, I think experience.
Right.
I think life just has a way of humbling you and has a way of encouraging you and causing you to really like, look at yourself. And I think for me, that was really it. Like when I was in Canada, it was really always around, this is a space, this is a new environment for you, right? Like, yes, you would have people that were bullied because like we all like any African that you would speak to that was in Canada from like the 2000s up until like let's say 2020, they would tell you that like the experiences of Africans were not necessarily the best, right? And I wouldn't even say just Canada, like just in North America, Europe generally, because we were not necessarily regarded as like, you know what I mean? It's now that Afrobeats and all these things have made us popular, but it wasn't like that, like, around the time that I went. So it was always a question of, well, this is the identity that you've been given as an African, right? It's not necessarily always coming from a very positive place, but this is you and these are the experiences that you have. So how are you taking these experiences and how are you taking these lessons that you've learned about life and about yourself to figure it out for yourself, right? And you never stop learning as well. And I think that's why our slogan is like on a journey of rediscovery, because you're always literally discovering who you are.
Would you consider yourself a rebel?
Rebel? Oh, never thought about it like that. I mean, I think just generally speaking, my attitude towards a lot of things is when you tell me all the reasons why I can't do something, I will show you all the reasons why I can. Right. So that's just a natural, I would say like a Ghana woman trait. But rebel, I mean, like I personally, I've never thought about it that way, but I think I'm just very headstrong in the sense that like I know what I want, and I'm not afraid to go after it. And like, yeah, certain times, you might feel imposter syndrome here and there, but you don't really stop, because the work has got to be done. So
Right.
just keep going.
Okay, so you finished your study, you did some work, you
Mhm.
earned some money. When did it occur to you that you need to establish something to give back?
So funny enough, it actually started way earlier than that. So when I started the organization, I was around 17, 18.
Okay.
I had just finished high school. I was now going into college. And one of the key experiences, so like I mentioned, I got to Canada, and one of the key things was that, you're in a new country. The people that you would mainly speak to are your friends, right? There wasn't like necessarily like communities or community centers where you can go to and ask questions. Like, you are a teenager, you have so many experience, like so many things that are new to you, right? And there wasn't any space that you could really like just go and say, oh, I want to talk about like, maybe there's a boy, how do I, like, you know what I mean? It's just, there was just not a lot of spaces like that. So I decided that I wanted to create that space, but also creating that space thinking about, 14-year-old Aisha and how 14-year-old Aisha was feeling when she had just come to Canada.
How was you
How,
feeling?
I mean, it was like you're in a new space. So there's definitely culture shock. You're figuring out, you're coming into your own identity, right? Because now you are you have that responsibility of, you know, taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, how do we do this? So it was really just taking all of those different pieces into account. So what actually catapulted, I would say, the start of the organization was I was at church, and there was this lady that there was a young girl that had come to church, and this lady was like scolding her because she said what she was wearing was not appropriate. And like she was scolding her, like, and the girl just started like she started crying. And I was just watching the interaction from afar. And after the lady walked away, I went up to the girl and I'm like, just basically offering her comfort. But then one of the first things that she said to me was like, I was so excited to come to church today that like I literally grabbed the first thing that I could see, right? And I recognized how that experience alone had just literally just,
Kill the spirit.
Killed her spirit. So I encouraged her, and then I said, we're gonna start this, like Friday sessions at the church. So every Friday after school, we're all just gonna come to the church and we're just gonna chat. And so she was one of the first girls. So it was literally 6 girls. Started with 6 girls. And we came, and I recognized that they were teaching me a lot as well about myself, right? Because there was one thing that they did was they held me accountable. So if I say I'm going to do something, they held me accountable. If I tell them that, like, this is my experience with this particular issue, and this is why I think maybe you should go this route, they held me accountable. So it became I would say like a sisterhood, where every Friday at 4 p.m. we were meeting at the church, we were having conversations, we were, I'll buy food, and then after I'll get someone to literally drop them off at home, each and every one of them. And as a result, I built a relationship with your parents as well, right? Because before anything, I was like, oh, we're meeting up at the church. What are you talking about? Oh, we're going to talk about the word. We're going to talk about what they're experiencing in school and all of these things. And all of those girls had different experiences. But one of the things that was very constant was the fact that at every point in their lives, someone had said something to them that had caused them to look at themselves differently, or had caused them to go back into their shell. For one of the girls, it was it was a teacher that said, I don't think you're smart enough to, to even finish high school. So it's like just recognizing that they were hearing so many information, but then they were also hearing information about themselves that they had not necessarily taken the time out to explore. So now you take on the identity, or the identity that someone else has given to you, without actually exploring if, is this really who I am? Or someone will come up to you and say, oh, you're so loud. And maybe naturally you're actually not loud. This is just how you talk, right? But then you would hear that you're so loud. So then now when you go into the classroom and there's, the teacher asks a question and you have the answer to the question, but you're like, oh, but they say I'm so loud, so I'm not going to speak up.
Do you understand? So it's like really just recognizing the power of words and how those words were literally shaping them up. And I just decided to do something about it because I could see myself in each and every one of them. So that was how it started. 6 girls. And today we work with over 5,000 girls across Canada and Ghana. Yeah, but it started with 6.
Who fancy?
Who funds it? Jesus.
Like that.
Question, who funds it? I mean, in Canada, we've been blessed to get lots of partners that would partner with us for us to facilitate our programming. So we run our programs within the schools across Canada. Well, not across Canada, specifically in Ontario. And yeah, we've been doing that for the past what, in 10 to 13 years. And we've been able to get different partners from different to cover it. In a sense, what we do is that we find partners that match what it is that we're doing. And then usually we submit a grant, we submit something, and then they're like, okay, no, yes. And I always like to share the story. The very first major grants that we ever got in Canada, we had to apply 3 times. So going back to what I said about, if you told me no, I'm going to show you all the reasons why I can. 3 times. And it was such a humbling experience. And they became our partners for like a good, 9 years as well. But we had to do it 3 times. So yeah, that's it. For Ghana, unfortunately, we're still looking for partners. So majority of the time, I would self-fund some of our projects, or we would have like specific events that would get partners for. In the past, we've been supported by the Canadian High Commission. We've been supported by GIZ. Yeah, but like really everything else in terms of like our ongoing programming, I self-fund. Yeah.
What has been the most satisfying aspect of the foundation?
I mean, I think every milestone is very satisfying. The main thing is the fact that like we're able to see girls, transform like in front of us, right? So like one of the girls that like I would say in Canada, for example, she has been with us from the very beginning, right? She has grown through like different transitions. She finished high school, she finished university. She finished university when her teacher said, no, you're not going to be able to do it. Then she went on to come back to the organization, start working. And I think that's literally the story that we get a lot of, in the sense that like we've created a community where the girls can come back and gain employment, right? So for us, it's not necessarily just a matter of, oh, we provide you with the skills and the resources and then that's it. It's also how can we integrate you back into the organization? That's if you want to, or beyond that, and connect you with like different opportunities. So I think that's really one of the greatest satisfaction, is knowing that we're not only creating safe spaces, but then we're also providing employment. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Thank you.
So looking forward, what would you want it to be?
What I want it to be?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I mean, I think we're definitely tapping into the tech space, and that's what led to the mentorship app. But then beyond that, I think really looking at ways that, we can provide more support, really. Because I think, part of the reason why I moved to Ghana was because I really wanted to make sure that I was given the same energy and resources to Ghanaian girls as much as I was giving to Canadian girls. And I think in Ghana we're in a very interesting space, because the experiences that girls face in Ghana and Canada are actually quite similar, right? You have girls that are experiencing low self-esteem, are experiencing mental health challenges, are experiencing whatever it is that they experience. It's very, very, very similar. But then when you come here, now there's like an added layer, right? There's like responsibilities, there are cultural barriers, there are environmental barriers that contributes to the way that a young girl feels about herself. So for me, and not just me, like for me and the team, it's really around how can we make sure that we are providing that holistic support, and we're continuing to provide that holistic support. But then at the end of the day, when any girl leaves or interacts with Power to Girls, and let's say 10 years from now, they're like, the minister of gender or whatever, they can talk about the impacts that Power2 Girls had on them. And as a result of that, they are going to be able to create spaces for other girls. So it's really that ripple effect that, for me anyways, I'm always focusing on that. It's beyond myself and it's beyond my team, but it's really the ones that are going to come after us that are going to run with it. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay. Have you watched this movie, Truth Be Told?
No, what is it about?
It's a movie about podcast and some lady that created something that
Oh,
looks like what you're working on.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the mentorship app. What is it?
So my Power app is a mentorship platform. It's a holistic platform. So basically think about everything that we do at Power2 Girls, from mental health, mentorship, entrepreneurship, tech, in a digital form. So this actually stemmed from the pandemic because most of our programming was in person. So meeting with the girls. And then the pandemic hit and then no one was allowed to go anywhere. So we were like, oh, okay, well, is this like we're stuck home? So all of our programming literally became virtual. And during that time, I personally have always wanted to create a mentorship platform because I recognize that, young girls, in particular, one of the key things that really enhances their overall well-being is mentorship and getting access to mentors. So we looked at all of the different pieces of, the work that we do, and we thought, how can we turn this into, a digital solution? And that's how my Power app came about. So it's available on Android, on iOS, and also on the web, and essentially allows for girls to connect with mentors. It allows for them to access our helpline for mental health support. It also allows for them to basically learn new skills. So we have, some personal developments, videos, content, and stuff up there on there as well. And yeah, they also are able to connect with each other. Currently, we have over 1,000 active users on the platform. And we have Canada, Ghana, Nigeria being the area with the most users as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about the app and how we are. Yeah.
That's wonderful. So, but you still have your career. Or is that your full?
This whole thing is my full-time job.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, this is my full-time job. No one else will hire me, really.
You've worked yourself out of job.
I really have at this point. I think that's what I'm going to believe. So if anyone is out there that's hiring, I'm expensive though, but they can hire me for consulting.
Yeah. Okay. So what made you come back to Ghana? Have I asked that question before?
What made me come back? The pandemic, really.
Okay.
I think a lot of people that moved back to Ghana within the past 3-4 years will tell you it was a pandemic.
Yeah.
So when the pandemic hit, Canada was on lockdown. Ghana was on lockdown too. And I was just like, I cannot be in this country and not be able to do anything. I mean, granted, like it wasn't like I was in Canada and I was like, going out. But I think there's something that happens to your psyche when it's like you've been like restricted to do something, right? You just all of a sudden feel anxious. And I feel like for me, I was just like, I'm not gonna do this. So the moment the borders opened for Ghana, I remember the dates, I think it was like September 12th or something like that. I was on the next flight, like maybe a week later. I'm like, I'm out. Came and then I was just like, what am I doing? But then around that time, funny enough, like the rest of my team also just decided they wanted to come to Ghana. So it was so beautiful because the entire Canadian team was actually here in Ghana at the same time. And we're like, listen, we have to work anyways because most of our programming had become virtual. So we were meeting with the girls virtually. And we decided, okay, we're going to revamp the Power2 Girls here. And then we put together a program with Accra High, and essentially brought together like over 300 girls doing programming. We focused on technology, entrepreneurship, and personal development, and essentially just providing programs for them. And then I think after that, I was just like, you know what? I think I can live here. I can live here again. Not that I've not lived here before, but I can live here again.
Was it like reintegration?
I mean, I think it was reintegration, but for me, after I left, like I always used to come back like every 2 years.
Right.
So I was very much familiar with like, it wasn't necessarily like a intense reintegration. It was more so, I think it was different because now it's like I'm working here, right? Building, like I have to consciously build networks and consciously build connections. And I think that's like, and it was so beautiful actually seeing some of the folks that like I know and folks that I've connected with actually like, going through this process. Like I know you had Kaku here yesterday, like, and it's just really, it was really a matter of like building genuine networks and connections in a very like organic way as well. So yeah, that was really what it was for me. Then I've gone back and forth, but for the most part, yeah.
Right. Are you intending to build your own studio too?
Studio. We've thought about it. We've definitely thought about it, but real estate in Ghana is not cheap.
Well,
So yeah, that's the main thing. But
between now and then, this place is available for you. So,
really,
yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
Well, there you have it. I love that. I actually absolutely love that because I think one of the key things, like outside of the schools, is like finding spaces that you can do anything
Yeah.
in this Accra here. So
Yeah. So
thank you for the
we
offer.
would love to collaborate. So I think I have a lot of minutes.
Okay,
45 minutes. So
I got you.
let's see. Okay, let's go to lifestyle for women.
Lifestyle for women. Okay.
What are your principles in that direction?
What are my principles? Wow. This is a very tough question. I think so. One of the things that I have learned in life is that, we all have our own experiences, right? And that experience shapes up the way that we see life generally. So, someone can go through, like I think there's this story, I'm gonna be paraphrasing, but it talked about how, there's a dad who was, an alcoholic. And every time he came home, he had two sons. Every time he came home, he was super drunk, he was like moving around, doing all of that stuff. And he had two sons. One of the sons decided that he was never going to touch alcohol in his life because he recognized the impact of alcohol on his father's life. And then the other son decided that's his way of life, right? And I share this to say that like our experiences shape up the way that we view the world. Believe it or not, like someone might, and again, like it also dictates how people, the moral compass that people have, right? So depending on the family that you grew up in, the environment that you grew up in, if you grew up in the church, if you grew up in, the community, wherever it is that those things shape you up. And I think for a lot of us, we don't necessarily take that time out to figure out if this is me or if this is what I have been told I need to do because of my gender, because of my age, because of like, my skin color, whatever that is. So I think really and truly, like the lifestyle of women in general, honestly, majority of the time stems from trauma that they've not necessarily like explored. So it would be really hard for me to talk a bit more on that because I know that there are things and there are experiences that people never talk about that influences the way that they view the world. And regardless of how much you would want to change that, you cannot. And I even say with our work that like we don't change anybody. We just provide them with the tools and the resources and they run with it. But best believe that if you create a safe space for anybody, regardless of gender, you create a safe space for them, they would come into their own. And that's just it.
You sound so wise. I'm almost being elevated. Let me take some notes.
Yeah. That's just the way of life.
Okay, so have you ever dealt with trauma yourself?
Well, I think everybody in life, I think we've all dealt with trauma. Like we all have our own